Prime Minister Hsien says that ASEAN's work must carry on and it cannot be held back or held hostage by any one member state's inability to fulfil its obligations. On the first day of the ASEAN summit, Prime Minister Hsien also repeatedly called for the bloc to remain united, but also to be open and inclusive to global partners amid rising geopolitical tensions. Hsien with more from Phnom Penh.
Much fanfare at the opening ceremony of the ASEAN summit here in the Cambodian capital before leaders sat down to a busy day. No surprises that the situation in Myanmar topped the agenda. After all, there has been little progress from the military government there on the 5-point consensus it agreed to 18 months ago. It included the cessation of violence, but the situation on the ground has instead worsened. At the 41st summit, Singapore's Prime Minister supported Indonesia's call for ASEAN to send a clear signal to Myanmar military authorities. He advocated for the country to be invited only at the non-political level for ASEAN summits and all of the bloc's ministerial level meetings if there continues to have no progress. Using strong words, Mr. Lee says the Tatmadaw has disregarded ASEAN despite best efforts and direct entreaties by bloc chair Cambodia. Mr. Lee's suggestion is a step up from the status quo, where Myanmar's political representation is already excluded from bloc summits and foreign ministers' meetings. But he says keeping to this would fail to reflect the gravity of the situation, and weakening from it would be the wrong thing to do. Leaving Myanmar out would mean decisions will have to be taken by the remaining 9 member states. Earlier in the summit, Mr. Lee mentioned other pressing things ASEAN must address. This includes continuing to engage China on the South China Sea Code of Conduct to minimize the chances of mishap and escalation. That's as the sea remains a potential flashpoint in US-China relations, especially given the strong likelihood presently that they may read the worst into each other's actions and intentions, which will have grave consequences for the whole world. Issues of common interest, including sustainability, the digital economy, and transport and connectivity. At the same time, Mr. Lee says ASEAN must also continue to remain open, which will allow it to take advantage of opportunities beyond the region. For instance, it should work with external partners to help Timor-Leste build capacity as it works towards eventual membership in ASEAN. That's as the bloc agreed earlier on Friday to admit Timor-Leste as the 11th ASEAN member state, which he says Singapore agrees with in principle. Hsien, CNA, Phnom Penh.
ASEAN and South Korea have come a long way since dialogue relations were established over 30 years ago. At the summit, Prime Minister Hsien suggested 3 areas where ASEAN and South Korea can step up their partnership. This can be achieved through deepening economic cooperation, enhancing connectivity and working together in emerging areas such as digitalization and smart cities. Mr. Lee also says Singapore condemns North Korea's intercontinental ballistic missile test this March. He added it's important for dialogue at the highest level and urged all parties to fulfill their commitments and refrain from actions that escalate tensions.